Hello, everyone. It is Thursday, April 29th, 2021. My name is Drew Sukup, and on behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's Stratodesk Webcast. Got endpoints, save time, save money, and work from anywhere better. Wouldn't I like to do that? It's going to be presented by Rich Severson, Vice President of Solutions Engineer at Stratodesk, and Patrick Coble, Security Nerd at VDI Sec. All right, let's get started. Patrick, I'll turn it over to you now. All right, Patrick, you might be on mute.
Of course, that's how it works. Hey,
There
I'm
we
Patrick
go.
Coble. I'm the VDI hacker, if you've seen me on Twitter, and I'm a security nerd at VDI Sec, and I've got Rich on here with me too, and we're going to go over some kind of work from home stuff and kind of the state of work from home, along with kind of how Stratodesk and just security things have been changing with the pandemic, and kind of go through some good stuff here. So we're going to walk through this right now. So I guess everyone is most likely working from home, and it sounds fun, and it should be fun, right? So we'll do kind of a quick informal survey. If you want to just drop anything to the Q&A box, which is that little question mark on the left-hand side of your pane, if you want to interact a little bit. But, who has been using VDI for their deployment for their remote workers, and who's had to expand that deployment? There's been seeing it for, I guess, basically since March of last year, when most places here in the U.S. kind of started shutting down and sending people home to work from home. But then I've also seen definitely a resurgence of VPN deployments, because it was something that everyone owned, and they would be able to easily do it. And most, depending on if you're like Cisco or Palo as kind of the big ones, or even Fortinet, you may have 5,000 or 10,000 licenses. Yeah. So definitely, Derek just said, yep, definitely lots of VDI expanding for sure. And the VPN's been there too. And then a lot of people, it was their first time working from home. Anybody here that was their first time working from home? Like, you've been at the corporate office for the past 15, 10, 5, 20 years. And now it's like you've got to hang out at your house and figure out how to join these meetings. And, are you using GoToMeeting or Zoom or Teams, or what flavor of communication stuff are you using? That's been always a big challenge for a lot of people working from home. And if you got kids under 5, you definitely got a different kind of situation going on of trying to manage things, running around, even if they're at school or learning remotely. Now the kids have had to learn how to use Zoom, and everything else is going in from there. And then the next one is like, who's got kids under 10? And that's definitely, they're at that golden age of learning to read and write and do math, and kind of have to figure out what's going on. So we had to, one person just said they had to expand VDI and VPN before doing that.
So, and Patrick, I'm going to interject, and I'm curious too. Not that we got it as a polling question. I wonder how many people are expecting that their VDI deployment may reduce in the upcoming months, or is everybody kind of expect it to stay where it is?
Yeah, because that's been one thing. Is it's been interesting. That's a good point, Rich, because some of these places look like they're not going backwards, right? Like, they bought X licenses, they expanded it, they bought all this stuff. And they may just keep on keeping on this new way,
Well, and it kind of goes along with my thoughts of work from home better, right? Again, everybody was forced to do it last year, and people have gotten it deployed, and they're now got the kinks worked out. And, with all the updates and the collaboration utilities, people have figured out how to, quote unquote, make work from home better. So it may just stay the way it is. Well, I think it'll be curious to see how things evolve this year.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Yeah. And a couple of people just said, yeah, they're keeping their VDI counts for long term. People have expanded their VPN. And then who had a senior in school last year or this year? Definitely a different kind of graduation, a different prom. I've seen a couple pictures. Both of us are based out of like Nashville, Tennessee. And so there's been some proms and stuff here, and I've seen other places not be able to have it. So, that's definitely really tough for everyone to kind of deal with that. And then, we'll definitely expand on this, but has your internet survived working from home? I know I refer to my internet as hillbilly internet because it's DSL, And if you breathe on it wrong, it can't upload or download, and it's just super slow, and it feels like I'm still on there. Oh yeah, there's someone there. He pulled 20 Ethernet runs around his house so that he could get stuff going. I did Ethernet in my house last year too, but then I still have hillbilly internet, so it doesn't really make it any better.
Yeah, we just gotta get that fixed for you though, Patrick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, run a string out to your house for you.
Exactly. Yeah, hillbilly internet, you gotta love it. So, and who has went back to the office? Is any of there? Okay, yeah, we got last year, senior in college, 2 kids, 4 Zooms. Whew. I mean, a lot. That was one thing that happened in my house. I had 3 Zooms, me working, doing nerdy things and helping people all over, and then the kids on Zoom for a couple of weeks when school first started. And man, our internet could not handle. And so I had to tell like one kid, like, for the first half of your day, don't turn your webcam on other than when the class starts. And the other half, the other kid could turn theirs on, because I would have to turn mine on, or I would just have to join audio only. So my internet is just beaten down. But it seems like a lot of people around in our area, Rich, I've seen a lot of people starting to go back to the office. Is that everyone there? Yeah. Never back to the office, please. Yeah, for sure. I agree. I love to go into the office. I mean, Rich, what about you? I mean, it's been fun. You've worked from home longer than me.
Yeah, I've worked from home for 30 plus years. I don't know if I would like to have to go to an office, but I will tell you, one of my next door neighbors works for one of the larger companies here in town, and and they're a very tech forward company, and I kind of suspected that as soon as all this got resolved, they would be racing back to the office. But interestingly enough, and I'm a neighbor to one of the developers, and they don't seem to be in a hurry to go back to the office. In fact, they've actually the facility where their IT staff resides, if you will, has actually been reduced to almost none. So it's going to be interesting, and then again, living here in Nashville, there was this latest announcement of the database company moving into town. So we're curious what they're going to do with the facility.
I know we got like Amazon. I mean, downtown traffic's game over. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but I've seen a lot of people going back to the office, and so that's where one of the things that I've seen at a couple of very large companies that moved a bunch of people to Citrix, VMware, and even WVD over the past year and a half of the pandemic here. Is who pays for it now. A lot of places that were paying for people's phones have really had to come in question of like, who reimburses that now? And one thing that I know is true for me, it's a utility. It is gas, power, electricity. It's right up there, right? Water. Like, it is one of those things in this new day and age, especially with the pandemic, that is completely a utility and required. And so I've worked with a couple companies that have stopped paying for people's personal phones and changed the stipend to pay for their home internet, because their position was officially moved to work from home. Other places, you're just paying for it. It's just everyone expects you to have a phone in most cases and check your email all the time, especially all the nerds that are on here most likely. But then who pays for your internet now? Now your internet is not just used for, playing, streaming, gaming, doing all that. Now it's for work, and I got to join in a Zoom meeting, and I got to do this, and I got to do that, So.
Well, and it gets to be a struggle. Again, having been work from home as long as I have, I've always had the challenge, because of course, my internet comes with the TV service provider, right? And Interestingly enough, it costs less to have the internet when you have the TV service. So then you're blending your personal costs with your business costs, and interestingly enough, in our home, we actually have 2 Stratodesk employees that work in our house, but then we have 2 other adults that are streaming videos all day long. So I just assume it's part of doing business and part of my career. But for those people that have had minimal internet, and now all of a sudden need to increase their bandwidth from, the typical, 2010 or 25 kind of thing, to now they've got to have 5010 or something like that to be able to do their conference calls.
Yep.
Yeah. Who absorbs that bump in cost, right? So.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And there's one person on here that loves, will trade paying for their internet to not paying for travel expenses to things. There you go. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of it from the quality of life perspective, all right, so let's say my my home internet cost goes up, $50 a month, but now I'm not having to spend an hour a day sitting in the car and $40 or 50 or 60 whatever dollars a month for gas. Hell
Yep.
yeah, I'd absorb that too.
Yep. Yeah, and so this is where we had to make a training for a very large customer that rolled out to VDI, and it was one thing that someone had never worried about as an IT nerd, a Horizon administrator on that side, was what is someone's internet like at their house? They never really cared, right? And in this situation, when your school and then more importantly, like your work kind of depends on it, that's where it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Because we had people that had 5 and 10-year-old Wi-Fi adapters, and they were saying, man, I've got 100 meg internet, everything's great. We start looking in VROPs on the Horizon side, trying to figure out what the latency is, and then running some metrics on the desktop to see it. We're like, why is everything just so slow? And it's because they're still on 802.1b and A, and they have a 100 meg internet connection, but there's no way they'll ever get it, right? Especially Wi-Fi. And then we've been having to send home training manuals to this client is like, how are you plugged in? What type of router do you have? What's the model number so that we can help you? And you try to do this with, 5 or 10,000 people, and try to understand everybody's internet, or just send it to the help desk to say, when people call in and you can validate that there's something's going on, we might have to ask them how their home internet's done. And now we're an ISP in that sense, because Comcast or AT&T or Verizon and even Starlink is not going to help you get this stuff fixed for your work, right? They're going to say, hey, you got an IP, we got a ping, it's good to go. Sorry about your luck with it there, And so I've seen a lot of places where we've actually had to send out new hotspots and new Wi-Fi adapters, right, to get them to 801, 802.11c. And then that's where it comes back to what Rich was saying earlier too. What are the people doing in your house? Normally back in the day, you didn't really care about what people were doing in there. But now it's like, oh, you're watching TikTok, you're streaming on Twitch, you're in a Zoom meeting, the kids are doing this, I'm trying to watch something and join a meeting at the same time. We're just crushing it. And so depending on your channels, 2 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, protocols, it just varies so wildly. And that affects how you work,
And I'll throw some stuff in here too, Patrick, and I'm also going to give a shout out to some of our strategic alliance partners too. But one of the things, like me, I actually live in a rather dense community as opposed to you. I don't have the struggle of hillbilly internet, but unlike you, I have the struggle of Wi-Fi clutter. I can see probably 13 or 14 different SSIDs from my office.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's the changes that your providers throw at you. Like perfect example, I got an email, probably about a week and a half ago, probably 2 weeks ago now, that, from my provider. And a lot of people don't pay attention to those emails that they get from their provider, but mine actually said, congratulations, we've increased your speed. Oh, by the way, your current modem doesn't support it, so you've got to get a new one, So it's things like that. And, if you're not using the right modem with the capabilities of your provider, have you tuned your router? Are you using the right channels to eliminate the clutter?
And what channels are your neighbors using? Like, I don't have to worry about like Wi-Fi bleed over or anything like that. But yeah, when we sent everyone to work from home, we have taken on this new burden that we did not, I think, anticipate, right? Because there's so many things throughout the pandemic that no one's anticipated. And so this is a good example. If you look at this slide here, this is the tale of 3 internet connections. As you can see on the bottom, the very, very sad one is hillbilly internet, right? 0.8 up, 10 down. And I pay for 12 down and 6 up, right? Like the most expensive DSL you can buy. But I really never get more than 0.2 or 3 up. So 250 kilobits a second. And I've never seen more than 4 megabits down ever. And then the middle one is kind of where most people are, right? Like 100 meg-ish connection, right? So that's Rich's, right? 85 down, 22 up. And then you got these people that are probably like out in California or in our state, like Chattanooga, where they've got gig. And so like, that's not even a pure perfect gig, but 780 down and 550 up. I can't even imagine how that would change my life. Like,
Well,
I'd download the whole internet, I think.
and to throw a niche into this, when you asked me for this speed test, Patrick, like I said, I actually ran that from my office, and I didn't think much about it. But interestingly enough, my office is actually a wireless bridge to my primary router. So after you had done this, when we spoke on Monday, again, I ran this on Sunday from mine, and you saw I got 85 down. But after we talked about it, I was like, you know what? Let me go run the same thing from my router. And so even being in IT, and being an engineer, I hadn't thought of it. I'm getting 85 down here in my office, but running the same test from my router, I'm actually getting 250 down. So I'm actually fooling myself with my own wireless bridge.
That's totally right. And so, I mean, one of the other person says I can relate to those wildly fluctuating internet speeds, like, and this is where like it even goes back, like we're kind of deviating a little bit too as we get ready for this, but this goes back to even kind of net neutrality. The internet is a giant highway of multiple lanes, and it's just everything is oversubscribed, right? There's no way if they run a 10 gig fiber down a row of houses that has 100 houses that everybody has a gig, right? It's not possible, right? So there's all types of things that's constantly fluctuating. And especially, I mean, I wonder if anyone here in the chat has like the off-school blues where everybody gets home and starts gaming, and they can see if they're still in a meeting, everything start to slow down in their neighborhood and or their house. I've seen that a bunch, and we've dealt with that with a couple people too. So, what are our work from home options? You pretty much got the VDIs, which can be a conglomerate of a bunch of different things, right? You got the Citrix, you got the VMware, you got the Microsoft WVD or RDS, and some other solutions out there like WorkSpot. And then you got like VPN. So you pretty much kind of have like the Palo and the Cisco are the big ones. And then you got Checkpoint, Fortinet, all that kind of stuff. So,
well, and Patrick, I was going to say, go back to that for a moment, if you will, because I know you've got some professional feelings about VPNs. I mean,
yep.
What's your current state of affairs regarding VPN? Because I know, obviously, we get asked about it, and there, as you pointed out, there's various flavors, et cetera, and it kind of confuses the market. But I mean, with all the secure VDI solutions, is VPNs going away?
In my opinion, as a hacker who gets paid to break into people's offices and things and deployments, I would say no. I would say there's not a lot of VPN solutions out there that meet modern security and compliance criteria. What I mean by that is when you have a VPN connected to now someone's personal device or their work device, everything that's on that network has a way to have a free ride to your servers. And so that's what I don't like. Everybody can usually talk to everybody that's on a VPN. There's not micro-segmentation or anything like that. In the VDI world, from VMware and Horizon, we can control what the person can do in and out of the session with Horizon policies, Workspace ONE policies, along with Windows group policies. We can control what they open, what they do, and then whatever they have on their computer, that virus that's running, it doesn't have a native way that it could just crawl through the Horizon session, right? Especially I work with a lot of people to go from there. Well, I mean, yeah, it's easier to hack a VPN because all I need to do is compromise that computer that's now at home all the time, right? And so when I talk about breaking into a VDI deployment, this is where the most important thing you can do to anybody on this webinar is making sure you got multi-factor authentication turned on, right? No one should just have a username and password and access anything sensitive in your deployment from the comfort of their own home and their jammies. So VDI solutions, even RDS, can be way more secure than a VPN. And so their network problems on their LAN with their Nest and everything else don't become your problem in the corporate deployment.
So I'm going to throw a leading statement out there. So this is kind of going to get where we get to the Stratodesk part of this, right? Is obviously having the secure OS. kind of eliminates a lot of those issues as well, right? So, and we'll talk.
Yeah, and so this is one thing that I saw when I've done penetration tests for a lot of companies right now is they are not just like a couple days or weeks behind patches or maybe a month. They are months behind. I have people that have 20, 30,000 endpoints that have been deployed and rolled out, in haste because they had to because of the pandemic, and they didn't have a way to do patching, right? So how do we patch the things now? If you just had, WSUS configured, that doesn't magically work unless they're VPN'd in and they're joined to the domain and everything's good and the machine account password's happy. And they're using virtual desktops. That endpoint is just a thin client, no matter what you did to it. And so if you didn't have SCCM or Azure Update Management configured correctly to work externally now for people that might not be VPNing in, and even if they VPN, it doesn't mean that the patch is going to get there because they may unplug their computer, turn it off every night, right? And so this is something I've seen. I've seen so many devices just get so far out of whack. And, that's kind of my main things right here is like work for home users are pushing the limits of their internet. We have to know what in the world they're using now. Companies are finding people that are using any device and every device, which means they have 5 and 10-year-old endpoints. They got huge packet loss, packet latency because they're too far away from their AP or their AP's old. There's so many things that are possible. And then even like DPI, scaling, resolution, and a smorgasbord of monitor sizes, where when we had the corporate standard when everyone was in the office, everyone had like this 17, 22, 24-inch monitor, and now they're plugging it into ultra wides. They're plugging into 3. Now I need 4 monitors. I've got this old monitor downstairs, but when I type on it with my virtual desktop, it looks fuzzy, and that's because it was made in 1994. And so these types of things are happening. And so the devices are slipping away because they weren't sent home with MDM or anything like that. And now people are trying to wonder what they're going to do with all these devices out there that are kind of non-compliant. Like, how am I going to patch all these patch things remotely now? How can I fix the problem that the pandemic started when we sent everyone work from home because we need to get everything compliant? And so it's like, what are we going to do now?
Drum roll. In comes Stratodesk with no touch center.
Rich, you have to officially take the wheel.
Well, I appreciate that, Patrick. And as we talked, let's keep this interactive. I like the way that we do this. So, and it's funny, going on the things that you've learned, talk about people having devices out there in the wild. And actually, one of the things that's come out this year being a bigger issue, kind of to your point about the older devices, is the scarcity of hardware. People can't get machines anymore, so now they're pulling things out of the closet, grabbing their teenagers' old laptop that they used to use in high school and all those kinds of things. And that's kind of one of the advantages of Stratodesk and the way that Stratodesk OS and Stratodesk No Touch Center works together. And so just a quick summary. So Stratodesk, effectively, we have 2 primary things, right? There's the Stratodesk No Touch OS, which is if you will, a thin client OS or a secure OS that we can put on virtually any device, whether it be a repurposed laptop or a thin client or, even some Chromebooks, those kinds of things, current hardware, all that kind of stuff. But it's a really locked down secure OS. And then we have the ability with No Touch Center to be able to manage it. So I'd like to address a couple of things that you brought up from the things you've learned, right? So going back to Patrick's, the things he's learned, we actually had customers last year, like he said, that, had to race from home. And we had the advantage that, you could send a device home, you could reconfigure a device before it went home, all those kinds of things. Or even if I had to send you a new device today, or you went and bought a device from your local retailer and put No Touch OS on it, the nice thing about the way that the Stratodesk works is once you give the endpoint the management URL, and that management platform could be in the cloud, various cloud services. You could have it in your data center using Cloud Extension. Quite frankly, we don't matter. It doesn't matter to us how you do that. But once you get that endpoint, the management URL, from that point on, the rest is easy, because once it becomes managed or manageable, you have the ability to do all those things that become concerns, right? It gives you the ability to push updates. It gives you the ability to see whether or not the device is online. It gives you the ability to reconfigure it, reboot it, send messages, support your end users and all the different things to do. So, you kind of have the variations of endpoints. It's either Windows or not Windows. And the belief that we have at Stratodesk is obviously having a very secure OS, it takes advantage of all the things that you can do now from a security perspective, from the update perspective, and regardless of the VDI platform you're using, we have the ability to deliver all those updates across the wild internet, I guess, if you will, right? So it's really beneficial having a good management tool and a good OS where, again, you just simply get the URL in so you can manage the devices and you've got complete control of them. So, obviously there's all these different thin client types out there. And again, with No Touch OS, we can go on, any vendor's thin clients. We don't care. It can go on, some of the legacy 32-bit hardware. It can go on different laptops. Like I said, even some Chromebooks that are out there, the Intel-based Chromebooks that are out there, we can do. And because of the fact that the way that we do updates and because we do updates so frequently, we get calls from different customers that say, hey, I just went out and bought the latest XYZ hardware from XYZ OEM company, and it's got a new NVMe driver in it, and we're able to collect that support data even out of those remote devices. And based on that support data, we can determine what drivers or what kernel level need to be updated, and we can provide those updates and even be able to support the latest and greatest hardware that's coming out. So it's very beneficial, and it's been very good for Stratodesk with this. So certainly, and if anybody has any questions, like we said, please feel free to throw them out there, right? Endpoint goals, right? You want to make sure that it's secure. You want to make sure that you can manage it. You want to make sure that you can help your users. As Patrick pointed out, helping your users, not only is it making sure that you've got the updates, not only can you, shadow those people, can you get the support information out to be able to assist them and be able to get the information regarding their home network, if you will, right? And so one of the things that we've done with our strategic alliances is we actually have partnerships with, companies like ControlUp and Liquidware, where we're participating to be able to collect those parameters with those type of alliances, and then be able to take advantage and deliver those fixes or changes out to the endpoints as well. Ports, and now this is about the security aspect of it, right?
Yep.
So
yep.
Not only do you have to be able to manage those, right? And Patrick and I talked about this a little bit, right? With Windows and a lot of the different management platforms out there, you've got to have a various set of ports open to be able to communicate and talk and take advantage and do things with those endpoint devices, whether they're inside the infrastructure or outside. And we debated about this a little bit, because if you, by default, with the Stratodesk management platform, No Touch Center, there's actually several ports by default that are open because we make it easy for people to be able to deploy Pixie and use legacy HTTP and those kinds of things, because we want it to be easy for people. But we also make it easy. You can go into the No Touch Center virtual appliance configuration, and you can shut, I think there's 6 or 7 different ports. So you apply certificates, so you have a certificate relationship between the endpoint and the management platform. And by doing that, you can literally knock it down to where you've got just one port and using a secure environment to be able to communicate with those endpoints.
Yeah, and and I mean, that's the one thing when we talk about, like, surface area, attack surface, all that. The least amount of ports, the better. And we know that Windows starts off with a bunch more, and so that's a big benefit. And then we had a question come in here too. Are there any thin clients that have VPN baked into the OS, or am I relying on that? So yeah, there definitely are, right?
Well, and actually, with Stratodesk, we support many of the current VPN solutions. You simply have to turn on the service. Now, some of them, obviously, because of licensing and those kinds of things, do require some add-on licenses. But
yeah, totally.
Again, a lot of the current VPNs are supported with Stratodesk. You turn it on from a service perspective within No Touch Center, push that configuration change down to the endpoint device. You can even turn on the network manager so the user can browse and see their own network and turn it on. And we make it easy to be able to do that and support. So think about it, where let's say suddenly you've got an employee who's now in a new role that's got to have a VPN because they've got to get to a certain application. And again, this is a remote employee. How do you do that? And how do you walk an end user through turning on a VPN and configuring it, right? So again, me as the administrator, I could connect to the web interface of No Touch Center, again, whether it's hosted or in the data center. I can push a configuration change down to that endpoint that turns on the VPN. I can pre-configure much of the VPN parameters. I can provide the network controller and network manager in the taskbar so the end user can see it. Then I can remote shadow, even with that device being added, I can remote shadow that end user, see what they're doing, and then walk them through doing the final steps of the VPN configuration to make sure it's working. So it's truly, an amazing tool the way that it works. So.
Yep. No, agreed.
Let's see what's next here. So endpoint patches. This is one of those interesting things, right? Certainly with Windows and, with all the VDI solutions, I say all the VDI solutions, but with the press of all the different OS and application solutions, these applications and these OSs have been pushed to the limits over the last year and a half, where they've been used in ways that they hadn't been used before, which then exposes exploits that nobody had ever thought to test or check for. So we're seeing where there's application and or VDI endpoint updates that are coming out quite regularly. And so, to your point, Patrick, about pushing those things out via different management tools from Windows or those kinds of things, it can get really cumbersome and complex, having different groups, different geographies, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I mean, and we know it's just like kind of that sheer quantity. And I mean, we've got a question in there that we know that there's no 100% in security, and that's for sure. Usually, everyone's security, even at the highest level, is probably like 70%, right? Because a lot of people can't pay to have that many people watch that many logs, that many solutions on their bat belts and everything else. And then we have things that have come out even from Microsoft, where there was a 0 day for a while that they were going back and forth with researchers on, and they hadn't patched it. And so people were compromised months behind when it was announced. And that has happened a couple times. And so when we talk about just the operating system on its own, right? We rely on Windows, we rely on Linux, is so much development that's constant. And the way CVEs and responsible disclosure goes, and you always have to think about the irresponsible disclosure process, which is, I found a 0 day or bug or thing, and I'm not going to tell anybody I'm going to use it for myself. This even goes back to the U.S. government, right? With Eternal Blue, right? And some of the WikiLeaks things that came out where some of their arsenal was leaked of what they did, how they were doing things. So it affected national intelligence in that sense, because once those things were patched, those things couldn't be used anymore. And so when we talk about security overall, it's a consistent process. It's defense in depth, multiple layers. And if you can reduce your risk by having an endpoint that doesn't have Windows, then that can be beneficial, especially if they're accessing a Windows desktop that you can completely control, that is in a data center, and you can control what goes in and out of it, which is why I love VDI in that sense.
Yeah, and I want to address this specifically regarding security update and security firmware. So the way that the Stratodesk, the way that we do the No Touch OS updates is we actually do updates to No Touch OS regularly. And regularly, I mean, it could be daily, it could be weekly, those kinds of things. And we don't force the customers to do updates. We allow the customers to do updates at their demand. A perfect example, we announced today that we have the latest and greatest of another VDI client. I mean, it was just released, and we've already provided it and made it available. So just because it's available doesn't mean you've got to go get it and push it down, but it's there if you want to. Likewise, we do security updates. So let's say that, you mentioned a CVE. So if a CVE comes out where that's got to be addressed, we address those very quickly, and we make that available to the customers to grab it, pull it down, put it into their No Touch Center, and then take advantage of all the throttling controls where you can say, hey, I want to be able to update, 50 devices across my network instead of 5,000 at one time because I don't want to flood my network. I want to be able to do it Mondays between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., Tuesdays, from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And oh, by the way, I want to make sure that the devices are idle, so I'm not pushing firmware updates down to my users that are using the devices that somebody may be working late. So, that's the nice thing is we provide the flexibility and give the customers the ability to determine when they want to apply those updates, but we make those updates available via the customer portal. So it's really important to understand that.
Yep, and to also know that no matter what we're doing on the endpoint side, even if we're removing Windows, most people are still accessing that Windows system in the data center. So
Yep.
there's at least 12 to 20 updates you have to do every month because it's been about 9 months in a row of a critical and or high vulnerability in just Windows every single month, right? So you've got to be on top of it. You got to set a schedule. If any of y'all are VDI admins out there on your Horizon deployment, just set a schedule that second week, that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is let's apply it and get ready to roll it out to some pools and see if it explodes anything with your applications so that you can be on it. Because when we have patches that come out that fix problems that have been known for months, this is how you remove yourself from that risk pool or add yourself into the haystack where you can disappear because you're like everyone else.
Yeah, it's really nice when you put even though you're using, Linux at the endpoint, because that's one of the things that people ask all the time too, is like, well, it's Linux and our staff isn't used to managing Linux. I mean, we've done a really good job of making Linux not feel like Linux, right? It's a desktop. That's the thing that's important to note. You're providing a desktop OS to the end users, and then as the administrator between the VDI solution and the No Touch Center, you have complete control of what the users see. You can give them a simple, Horizon icon. You can give them, different Horizon icons to different application sets if they need them. And to your point, Patrick, right? You get into the regular maintenance updates of pushing the updates into the VDI pools so that you're making sure that your line of business applications and your SaaS applications are up to date, and then take advantage of what No Touch Center gives you and the fact that No Touch OS is secure and be able to make sure the endpoints are locked down. So between the two of them, you have an easy solution to make sure that you're keeping your line of business applications up to date and secure. And we do a really good job of making sure that your endpoint OS is up to date and secure as well. So.
That's right. And then when you look at like this here, this is a good one there of all these other things that most people guaranteed have on an endpoint that have to get patched and updated in there. How many people here still have the Java? I mean, it's, I hope most people don't, but like it's still out there. It's still a line of business application, still a big deal, still on, billions of devices, I'm sure. And then most people are running a different browser than what comes in Microsoft, right? Internet Explorer or Edge now. So there's a lot of things you've got to keep up versus, just a nice firmware package that Stratodesk bundles everything together so that your clients are up to date. So you're getting security updates on the Linux side, but you're also getting all the other programs that are on there and clients updated too. So it's good stuff.
And actually, you made me chuckle, Patrick. I want to throw something out for our developers in conjunction with Microsoft. So interestingly enough, we just announced recently, there is now Edge browser for Linux. It's still in beta, but just kind of show how forward-thinking Stratodesk is. We can actually already deliver Microsoft Edge browser on Linux.
Yep.
It's there. It's still beta, but I mean that's how forward-thinking we are. That we have that capability already built into the application set. So.
Yeah, no, and I mean that's definitely a big part of it. This is kind of the snapshot of Stratodesk, which I think Rich will dive into more of some of the menus and the kind of the clean look of everything and how it all works. So if we go to that next slide, that'll be
this is what so No Touch Center, the management platform, actually has two different interfaces, and we're not going to go too far into it because look, I think everybody that's on this call understands what endpoint management is, right? And there's certain things that you've got to be able to do. If you can't do those things, if you can't do updates, if you can't maintain and see what's going on with the devices, then you probably shouldn't be in this space, right? But it's about how you take advantage of it and how you do it and do it well, right? So like one of the things that we do, and I think we do better than our competitors, is the flexibility of the deployment of the management tool, right? So let's, there's no touch OS. We understand that. It's the flexibility of the management tool, meaning, no touch center, you can deploy it in your data center. You can deploy it in your favorite cloud solution. You can deploy it in your own cloud solution. And it has two basic web interfaces. There's the web interface that's used for managing the appliance itself, and that's kind of what we're looking at here. And you see there's not a whole lot of configuration to it. Again, it's about making it easy to use, easy to understand. So we include things like Pixie servers if you're doing those internal, but we give you the ability to see what the firewall is in use and not in use, those kinds of things. And then we provide what we call a cloud extension. And again, I'm not going to go too far into all these things, and all this information is available on our KB site and our website. But like the cloud extension, what that does is you can take a no-touch center. Let's say you've been a Stratodesk customer, or you're going to be a Stratodesk customer, and you're running no-touch center, the management tool inside your data center. But now you've got to manage not only those devices that are on your premise network, but you've also got to be able to manage those work-from-home devices as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so rather than having to open up a whole bunch of ports in your firewall and worry about exposure and risk and going through the security department, we came up with what's called Cloud Extension. It's the same virtual appliance. You toggle it into Cloud Extension mode, put it into your DMZ, and it gives you the same management level of all those endpoints that are work from home that you would have for those endpoints that are on premise. But the cool thing about it is the only communication through your infrastructure is a SSH API key outbound only. So imagine that you can remote shadow those devices, you can reconfigure them, you can change the firmware on them, you can collect support information. And like I said, working with our alliance partners, you can get all the information about their network out of those devices by not having any risk coming inbound. So.
Yep.
All right, what we got next here? Endpoint the why. So, again, having a highly available console, right? The fact, like I said, it's a web service or a web tool that you can have in a cloud service, so it's available. And by the way, the other thing too that's important to note is even if for some reason the management plane went away, the endpoints are going to continue operating. So that's the key thing, right? There's going to be no negative impact on the end users. In fact, the end users wouldn't even know if the management plane went away. Extreme role-based access. This is, again, so now we're talking about the application security of the management tool, right? We have the ability to have help desk users, admins, super admins, people that only have the ability to do configuration changes, people that only have the ability to push up firmware. Because when you get into these larger organizations, these larger IT organizations, it's nice to have a single pane of glass for a management tool. But even if you've got a single pane of glass for a management tool, you're going to have different groups of different administrators within the organization that have the ability to do different things. Meaning, if Patrick and I were part of the same IT team, Patrick's looking at it from the security perspective. I'm looking at it from the endpoint management perspective. So even using the same tool, we're going to have different roles and different functions. So to be able to configure that and make that available to the organization is really important as well. The integrated no VNC, and I've talked about the remote shadowing, and this is one of those things, like I said, it's really important to understand, again, using No Touch Center in my data center, in conjunction with Cloud Extension, and a endpoint that's behind somebody's NATed home network, right? I can actually, from No Touch Center, click on this, click on the device, and actually, one of the really cool things about Stratodesk OS as well is I can have an end user. So an end user calls and says, "Hey, Patrick," or "Hey, Rich, I'm having a problem with my device. I can't get my VPN configured, or I can't get my application to launch." I could simply say to that user, press Control-Alt-I on your keyboard. Control-Alt-I with Stratodesk OS is what's called an identify task. And effectively what that is that's that machine raising its hand. So simply, instead of having to ask for MAC address, IP address, or host name, or any of those ridiculous questions that the support desk might normally have to do, we just ask the end user, press Control-Alt-I, the machine identifies itself. I click on identify, I can see that machine. I can go directly to it in the tree of the management platform, click on shadow, And what we do is we actually use an SSH proxy tunnel to tell the device to open a shadow session back to the cloud extension in a secure connection, and I can see what the end user is seeing. So it's really, really good. It's really secure, and it provides a tremendous asset for being able to support those work from home users.
Yep.
This is one that I'm starting to see more and more of this, right? Where people are moving away from endpoint client solutions to where people are using more browser-based things. Whether those browsers are being put into kiosk mode or just used to launch secure gateways to be able to get to their application resources, those kinds of things. And so it's important to understand that with Stratodesk No Touch Center, No Touch OS, not only do we provide probably, I want to say, best in class when it comes to the client VDI or VDI clients, we also provide capabilities of the browser so you can do those things as well. And one of the things that people often don't think about is the fact that using Stratodesk OS in a browser in kiosk mode makes a great digital sign solution when you're talking about like the Raspberry Pi hardware. So it's a great solution as well. The ability to disable and unused features within browsers. Patrick, I know you made a note about this, and I'll let you throw some commentary on this. But yeah, I mean, just because you're putting a browser on the endpoint, if you can't control the profiles of those browsers, then you're really not controlling the browser. So we give you the ability to have those kinds of controls even within the browsers themselves as well.
Yep.
Let's see. This is the amazing thing with the profile. So Patrick, I know you brought this up. Is there something you wanted to say about this?
Well, I mean, it just means that it's a nice common platform that a lot of people know so that you can customize things if you need to, right? That it's not like many of the zero thin clients that are out there where if you can't put it in a config line, you can't do it like at all, like game over, no anything else. So having that flexibility is definitely key.
So I'm just, while you were talking, Patrick, I was going through and reading a couple of questions. So I want to see if we can address some of them here real quick. So one of the questions is, thanks for the wonderful solution. Appreciate the thought there, and I'm glad that somebody recognized, people are recognizing that it's a great solution. And then asking about RTAV performance with the ARM processor. I'm not going to speak off the top of my head regarding the RTAV performance on Pis, because again, with the collaboration tools and the communication capabilities, it's changing rapidly all the time.
Oh, I mean, just Teams alone, you've got to update it like right off the bat, because there was an update even last month that had VDI RTAV performance things in it. So you have to keep that client up to date on top of everything else.
Well, and actually, interestingly enough, I want to bring this up specifically. We actually have a Horizon customer that's been having some issues when it comes to the microphone dictation capabilities, and actually VMware is getting ready to release an update specifically regarding that. So, when it comes to x86, x64, I know it works great. We've been doing a lot of diagnostic work based on the speech dictation stuff. So yeah, that's a really good option there. Again, I would say with the Pi platform, I'd recommend you give it a test. Again, we've been dealing with OS for the Pi platform from an enterprise perspective longer than anybody else. I mean, I'm not going to discount the Pi Foundation and the Raspbian OS. Obviously, they've been doing it longer than we have. But I mean, when it comes to putting a Pi platform in an enterprise with an enterprise OS and enterprise capabilities, I would say it's been Stratodesk longer than anybody else. So. And regarding to pushing out the firmware updates with the work from home clients, we don't throttle the bandwidth or control the bandwidth, but what we do give you the ability to do is based on groups. And I say groups being, you can say, hey, I want to do the state of Texas, or I want to do all these devices that are in this line of business unit. You can say, I want to allow no more than X number of concurrent threads, meaning let's say I've got 500 users in Tennessee, but I know that the bandwidth limitation. So I'm going to say, the bandwidth going into the Tennessee area, I don't want to do more than 5 devices concurrently because I don't want to throttle the network. I can also say that, based on the fact that there's central time and my maintenance windows are from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., I want to be able to do updates on Mondays between midnight and 3 a.m. But then on Tuesdays, because something else is occurring, additional backups or whatever, I maybe have even less time on Tuesdays. So at Tuesdays Central Time to that group, I want to be able to do updates between 11 p.m. and 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. I should say, right? So we give you that level of control. And like I said, important to note is the fact that you can also, before you begin the update, check to make sure if that device is idle. Because just because I'm doing an update for an individual that normally works from 8 to 5, for whatever reason, they may be, flexibility of hours, right? They had to take their child to the doctor at 1 o'clock today, so now they're going to put in their extra hour from 9 to 10 p.m. So let's make sure that that device is idle. Make sure that even though it's outside of their working hours, let's make sure they're not doing something before we force that update down to them. And then how is the product licensed? So it's based on endpoint licensing. And I'm not going to go into pricing, that's what our sales team is for and all that kind of thing. But basically, it's a perpetual license. You buy it. You then get that license. You can even transfer the license if a piece of hardware dies off. And the first year includes the management platform as well. And then there's a year 1, year 2, year 3 kind of thing, maintenance things that are, a very, very reasonable cost. So, and again, we'll leave that to the sales team to give you the actual pricing. But I think compared to our competitors, you're going to find that Stratodesk is probably the best price platform out there. So, all right, let's jump back to the slides here. Where we go. Conversion of existing PCs and other devices. Yeah, again, with the reduction in hardware capabilities or hardware that, the availability of hardware, I should say, we're getting phone calls from customers, partners, et cetera, that say, due to the shortage of chips, we can't get machines anymore. Or they may have been getting, model ABC of machine, and based on having model ABC, their existing platform allowed them to do this, but now all of a sudden they can't get that machine anymore. It maybe looks the same model, but it's now, DEF, and so their management platform or their vendor's platform can't support having different OSs on something that's similar. We have the ability to do that. We can base it on DMI code. We can base that on kernel level. We have the flexibility of being able to, put our OS on vendor A's machine and vendor B's machine. Again, we're hardware agnostic. That's the advantage, right? So is there an NFR? Absolutely. I mean, it's a fully functional product. You can go and sign up for the trial, and you can download the software. It comes with the default download is a .zip file. In that .zip file, you have the ability to create a bootable USB, so you can live boot it, or you can do an install. You can do that. There's also even MSI, so we've had customers that use the MSI to push our software out there, as well as the management No Touch Center. Includes demo licenses as well. So you can download the OVA, spin up the OVA, so you can have the ability to manage those devices and have those test devices out there basically for, 3 devices for an unlimited time period. So, all right.
Yep. That's good stuff. Yeah, we got about 5 minutes left here.
I just realized we've been going on, so doing better than I thought. So
I think we've had a good amount of questions, and I think we've stayed on these things and talked about them good and deep in there too. So, yep. And then we just talked about the NFR, that last question that just came in. So if this point here is, if you're just having everyone connect to your Horizon solution, then why have another Windows endpoint connect to another Windows endpoint, right? If they're doing their business applications there. Now, that's where that conversion can really be helpful, because there's so much compatibility out there for existing thin clients or even PCs and Chromebooks, just like you said, Intel-based Chromebooks, that you have that ability. And then you have Raspberry Pis as the lowest cost endpoint you can pretty much get. But you can also reuse those old devices. So really, really good stuff here. So definitely look at it.
So with that, I think we'll stop talking here and see if there's any other questions out there. I know we want to have a couple minutes for Q&A, and we only got 5 minutes left. We ran longer than I thought we might. So.
Yep. And so let's get it right here. There was there. This is probably a good one to kind of like sit on here for a second as we talk about like where the company started from and
Yeah,
where it's at now.
it's important. Yeah, we're not a new company. We've been around for a long time. So.
Yep, and I think that's a good point. As we're waiting for questions. Anybody got some cool stuff or funny work from home stories? I mean, hey, we'll take that now, right? And I know I've had some interesting days with the hillbilly internet fighting me to the death, and the kids working from home and everything else in between.
Well, and while we're waiting, I think that's one of the good things that's come out of this is the fact that, originally, when I first started working from home, to have a dog bark in the background was extremely embarrassing,
Yeah.
but now it is what it is. We all have lives. We're all human beings,
Yeah. I've seen so many more kids in meetings and stuff too. Like kids come off the bus and they walk in and are saying hi to mom and dad with everybody else in the meeting and waving at them. When I've done these, 4 or 5 o'clock meetings in the afternoon or early meetings in the morning, the same kind of thing. Where I got to go walk them to the school bus. I got to go take them here. I'll be back in a minute. So I think that's been great. I mean, I think what was that? It was that BBC reporter that had their kid come in. And the wife came running in, and then even their second kid came in. I think that kind of started like what work from home was going to be like, where it's like kind of organized chaos. Yeah. Look, we got one. We got compatibility with call center soft phone programs and sending media over the internet.
So again, that's the advantage of the Stratodesk OS. We actually have partnerships, and we're actually currently working a partnership with Avaya. So the latest version of Avaya for desktops. We're working on the Alliance partnership, getting that worked up. But yeah, we can even support those kinds of things. So depending on the operating, the application, I should say, is how we get it out there. But certainly check with us because it's probably something we can support.
Yeah, we got another one here. Will you support virtualized Mac OS?
Virtualized Mac OS.
Are you talking about like a virtual Mac? Because I know there's things like that are out there, like Hackintosh and stuff like that people will run on non-Mac devices, and then there's the VMs that may be coming there.
What is the largest installation of Stratodesk machines? Can the management tool scale to hundreds of thousands? Yes. I won't tell you our largest deployment just because I don't think that's the appropriate thing to do, but I will tell you that we have multiples of deployments that are in multiples of tens of thousands. So. And again, that's the advantage of it being a virtual appliance and a web-based utility. We can scale it to whatever the needs and demands are.
Yep, and it looks like we're does our time die at the 2 minutes or at the time?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't die. We can go a little bit over.
Oh, okay. Well, we were just
a tiny bit, not too much.
All right, not too much. Yeah, about 42 seconds, because that's the answer to all the. Any chance it'll integrate with Systancia client used in French hospitals? Ooh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's not one I've heard of, but I would tell our marketing team, grab that and let's take a look, and certainly let's have a conversation, because depending on what the application is,
if it already has like a Linux client, right, there could be a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, we do support the ability to, if you will, sideload applications. So depending on what it is, the use case, those kinds of things, it may be relatively simple to sideload it as a module extension.
Yep, that'd be neat. All right, well, cool.
All right.
So, Patrick, I was going to say, before Drew jumps back in, Patrick, I want to say thank you as always. It's a pleasure to have the conversation with you. And, I like doing these kinds of presentations where it's just interactive conversations rather than PowerPoint. So, again, appreciate it. And thank you for joining us.
Yep.
Yeah, this has been a complete delight. I love these kinds of webcasts too, and I'm sure the audience will too. So thank you, Rich and Patrick, for taking the time to speak with us today. As a reminder to our audience, you will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. And from all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.